This one's the same. So these are the ones I would not rig for up here. Okay. So like I say, the price is what you want to pay for a mount. Okay. A lot of options. Okay. So let's look at the transducer mounting. Okay. You've got to get your transducer mounted properly to get the best performance out of them. Okay. And it's got to be in the water for proper operation. Transducers do not work well in air. They do not work well in aerated air. Okay. What I mean by that is turbulence, prop wash, things like that. So for transom mounting, usually transducers are midway on the starboard side. Okay. They are not behind a strake on the boat, on the hull. Okay. So if you got a strake coming up on your hull, so the strake's here, you want the transducer to either side of it, because that's going to create turbulence. And they're there for a reason. They're there to create turbulence. You don't want your transducer near that. Okay. Now, slow speeds is not an issue. When you start getting a little bit faster, say if you wanted to cruise at maybe 20 miles an hour and try to locate fish, you got to be really careful of that. Again, the nice thing is that if you just plan this right from the first time, you'll never even know you avoided a problem. Okay. So what I use on aluminum hulls, I use that mounting block. Okay. It's a small I'm going to say it wrong. Basically, it's a starboard style material plate with 3M permanent sticky material in the back. Those work really well. And that's what I use on all aluminums, because I don't believe in drilling holes in boats if I don't have to.
So that it has an adhesive that goes on, and
yes.
you don't drill any hole. How thick is it?
It's almost 3/4 thick.
Okay, so
yeah.
You can put a 3/4 inch screw in.
Yeah, because then you have to figure out the screw length, and then you subtract off the thickness of the bracket that your transducer mounted to. Okay, and that way you're not going into.
What's the name of that material?
It's HDPE, high density polyethylene.
But you buy it with that, or
you buy it with that. You buy it with that. You have Amazon sells those. I think in one of my videos I may actually show that, maybe on the Vexus video. But it's roughly there's two different.
The transducer mounting plate.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
So
They go.
Google that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you glue it on. You don't screw.
Well, you don't glue it on. That adhesive behind the little piece of tape there is from 3M. I tend to trust 3M for adhesives. They tend to do a good job. However, surface preparation is paramount. Yeah, absolutely paramount. I'll show you one in a moment. One thing is that if you have a boat that goes over 50 miles an hour, you're really going to need to have an in-hull transducer to be able to track bottom. Okay. Most of these transom-mounted transducers are not good at tracking bottom above 45, 50 miles an hour. And if you don't have it mounted right, you could be even less than that. So, okay. Again, that turbulence issue with the air in the water. So, okay. So this is that plate I'm talking about. This was on that 25-foot Lund. Okay. This actually came from the factory. They had screws in it. The ones I use don't have screws in it. Okay. But this, you'll find that, I believe Cabela's, I know Cabela's carries it, at least the one in Maine. I'm pretty sure the one here carries it.
You get it shipped wherever. As long as
Amazon Prime.
Well, even on Cabela's.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And they have it there. But you notice that what I did on this one, this had an old skimmer transducer here from his older unit that we moved to the bow. And so what I wanted to do is replace that one. Actually, we took that transducer off this boat. We added a 3-in-1, Lowrance 3-in-1, and kept the Garmin in the same place. The nice thing is I can unscrew that old bracket, screw the new one in. I don't have to seal it, and I have to wait for cure times. I have to worry about it leaking. Okay. So, and what I did then is I just simply rerouted everything through the same cable holders. I don't use those cable holders either, this type, because again, screw through the hull. I use, I cannot remember the name. The factory was down the street from me in Raymond, New Hampshire. Okay. Then they recently got bought out by an Italian company. But what you do is you use epoxy, 2-part epoxy, and epoxy to the hull. And then you have a stud coming off, or you have a bracket coming off, or a tie wrap base coming off. and that way you don't drill into and it just attaches. They work really well. A lot of boat manufacturers use it. If you start looking inside how they hang cables and stuff, they're using that component. Expensive. I'll say one thing, the 2-part epoxy, about $40 a small set, 2.5 millimeters. So. A lot better than drilling. Honestly, I get nervous when I drill in hulls. I mean, if you had seen me when I was drilling in a stereo system in this one boat was brand new, 100 grand. I'm sitting there going, okay, I got to drill a couple 5-inch holes in this thing. You know, it took a half hour to drill a hole because the hole saw I bought was cheap Chinese. Okay, there's a difference between those and Milwaukee ones, and so I had to back drill it the whole distance, and it was what, a 1/4 inch thick fiberglass, and I always start them back drilling anyway because that'll keep them from chipping. Because the last thing you want to do is chip your gel coat on your boat, okay? Aluminums, you don't have that problem, obviously, but you do have a lot of burr issues. Okay? So, but this is the mounting plate that I typically will buy. That's, I think, roughly $25, $30. And what it is it has that 3M sticky on the back. But again, surface prep is key here. This boat had, can I get the button? There we go. Had anti-Fouling paint on it. You see the black on the hull here. That's saltwater. This is a saltwater boat. I don't know if any of you freshwater boats have the anti-Fouling paint on there to keep the barnacles from. Yeah, some. But again, you want to come down as close as you can to the bare material underneath. Okay, and
they'll. Does it stick to paint, or you have to take? You got to get.
I would take the paint off because the paint's going to peel. I don't care how good it's adhered. It's, you know, the plate's on there. It's not coming off. You know it's not coming off because you surface prepped it properly. Oh, yeah. I also use, there's some 3M prep pads. If you've ever had the molding replaced in your car, they use those prep pads before they put the moldings in, okay? Make them permanent, okay? And so that's what I do. I took this because I forgot to bring a chisel with me or a scraper. I use a small, medium-sized screwdriver. Took me, again, a lot of this stuff takes me about a half an hour to do something silly. That if I had the right tool. But I scraped it all the way down to the surface. And then what I did is I surface prepped, put this on. This has to sit on the hull and cure up for 24 hours. So I basically, that's the last thing I do at the end of the day. So when I come in the next day to work on the boat, it's partially cured or it's not gonna move on me. I will say once you put it on there, it's not gonna move anyway. But I just wanna make sure it's not gonna move. I want to give it the best conditions I can.
Do you need to clamp it in some way, or no? You just stick it.
I just sit there and go for 5 minutes, you know, and it's stuck. Yeah. This is not a it's not a glue stuff. It's an embedded epoxy type of adhesive, but it's not liquid style. It's very tacky. Yeah. So don't put it on your hand because you'll be wearing it. Okay, just saying. But if you look at, I also on this one, really hard to see with this picture, I got these little pieces that I use for running the cables up. I've got this one, which is the standard ones you have the peel backs on. They work fine on the block, but for the hull, I use the ones I was talking about that use the epoxy setting on it. And so I had to scrape, again, I had to scrape every one of those off and epoxy it in. Okay? And it's just, you know, an extra couple hours or hour, whatever, surface prep and doing it right, save you a lot of trouble in the future. So, okay. This is another way to mount it on the transom. Anybody run jack plates? Probably not. Seems to be a bass boat thing. Although I can finally convince Mr. Fonzie to get one on his boat. And the reason you can do that is you can actually take off in shallow water pretty nice with that. Okay. I can get my 22-foot boat up in 1.6 feet of water in Okeechobee. So, most bass boats can't do that, but it's two things. It's the jack plate and it's technique. And it's also something called heavy root. Torque, heavy torque. Yeah, it's a heavy torque motor. So, but anyway, so this makes it nice. I mean, this mount here alone is about $250, okay? But I never have to worry about it. Once I bolt it on, it's done. Another way you can do it is that
How is that one adjusted?
there's no adjustment on it. because it comes properly angled for the water line. So, yeah, which is nice. You can probably slightly tweak it a little bit in the holes.
Yeah,
And if you
they don't have much clearance there, I would imagine.
No, not really. Well, yeah, you can tweak it a little bit. There's a little bit of a gap between the hull and that brace there. But I haven't found that I've needed that. I get pretty good images there. So, this is what typically comes if you get a side scan transducer from the factory. Okay. It'll be mounted on the step of the boat. So, again, it's the factory. They can screw into the hull all they want to, because they got the tools and everything to fix the holes when they screw it up, and they'll cover the boat for you. So, okay. So, oops. Go. Yeah, I don't. My fingers are too fat. Okay. Here's something you want to do. If you got a transducer that's sitting on your stern, okay, on your transom there, check it every time you get in the water and out of the water. Because what you're checking for is the proper angle, and you're checking for these screws here, right here, are tight. They do loosen up. No matter what you do, they're still going to loosen up.
Even with nylax?
Yes, yes. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of
You got there's a significant amount of vibration here. And even driving down your roads here, boy, pothole city, okay? You know, that, you're going to have it perfectly straight at the house, and you get to the ramp and it's hanging down, okay? So.
Is that, anybody ever tie wired? You know
No.
what I mean? They drill a hole, they drill holes down through, and they actually hand wire.
I haven't seen that, no.
I've learned how it's used commonly in aircraft.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, that's very common in aircraft for real good reason.
And for a real darn good reason.
But for example, transducer shield and saver, which is the mount I showed you earlier for the transom mount, they make a mount for this type of transducer and this type of transducer that will keep that aligned properly for you all the time. And it'll also allow you, say, if you run over a log. And I know you guys typically don't have logs floating out in the lake here.
Don't be surprised.
Typically, okay. But spring runoffs, you get, yeah. I mean,
when the creeks swell out.
yeah, oh yeah. So you got that issue. And the nice thing about that mount is it will spring back in position. It'll come out and spring right back. Yeah. Expensive. That's probably $100 or so, but it's worth every penny. I mean, I was on the James River one day. We had major flooding effect. They had to cancel the river because it was up so much. I rolled over a 4-foot log in the lake. I was surprised I didn't blow a lower unit out of that, but it just went up and over. Like spookiest thing in the world. So, but again, transducer shield and saver. Yeah. I probably should have put that. Yeah, because if I'm mounting a transducer and it's not one that's already blended into something, that's the brand, that's the company that I use all the time. My customers typically say, why is it so expensive? And I say, well, there's a reason, because it's high quality. Okay. So, in fact, you can get the puck mount for that one. Oops. For this transducer here, you used to be able to get that at Bass Pro Shop, but it was for the trolling motor. Because a lot of guys will take that old style skimmer transducer and mount it to your trolling motor. I think I got a picture of that. And what'll happen is you hit a log or branch or rock. Up here we tend to hit a lot more rocks, and it snaps it right off. So, okay. What is going on? This thing is getting... Yeah, I think what's happening, I must be with my fat fingers hitting multiple buttons. Here we go. So, trolling motor transducers, okay? Most of you guys will want something on the bow if you fish on the bow. If you're not pure trolling, you probably want a transducer up there, okay? And the majority of the transducers coming off the bow are on your trolling motor, okay? A lot of trolling motors these days have built-ins. So the US2 on on the Minn Kotas, I will warn you, they do work. They'll show you bottom. They are not at all good for something like vertical jigging or drop shotting. You just don't have the clarity and the resolution on that transducer. Okay? But if all you're interested in is tracking bottom, they're perfectly fine for that. Okay? I've helped a lot of guys at tournaments, and they're complaining that it doesn't work. And I say, look, there's your transducer. It's a POS, and let's get something better. So anyway, but most of them are going to take an adapter cable, depending on what unit you have. Okay. Many vendors right now are providing transducer mounts for trolling motors. Again, I use transducer shield and saver. But the key piece is you need to protect your transducer from things like rocks. Okay, so there are times when you're just going to roll over a rock. I don't know if you guys fish shallow at all, but I get nervous under 20 feet. Okay, I'm a deep water person, but there are times when I'm on a certain river, or even when I'm guiding up on the St. Lawrence River on the reservation. I go shallow because that's where the fish are at that time of the year. I want to make sure my transducer is protected. You don't want to keep scratching your transducer. It will change your signal quality. Okay. So this is the built-in. This is on a Minn Kota. I think that's on my old Fortrex years and years ago, before I went over and swapped to an Ultrix. So this is a side imaging transducer on a Ghost. And what you do is you replace the nose cone that's on the original one with this nose cone, which will then give you side imaging. Okay. So yeah, the Kraken's got this. Yeah.
Side imaging built into it.
Yes. Yes. And some of the hummingbirds, depending on what variety, but the side imaging that's built into the Kraken and built into the Minn Kotas are unit specific, like Garmin or Hummingbird.
Yeah.
And this is obviously Lowrance only. So, but that makes sense. So they want to sell you a trolling motor and a unit and transducers and the whole line.
They wouldn't even give me the option of leave the transducer off.
I know, yeah.
And they're not cheap.
No, they're not. And power pole moves, the move trolling motor, same thing. There's a little weird. And this is that transducer I showed you that was mounted on the transom before. And this is on your trolling motor. Guess what happens when you hit a rock with that, or you hit a tree? You break it off. You break it off right there. Okay. Now the neat thing about that transducer shield and saver mount for that, it doesn't matter if you've broken it off. It'll go right over top of it and clamp it to the trolling motor with a band clamp, and you're done deal. So, okay. Now say you have a trolling motor, like I did. Actually, this is on my buddy from Vermont's boat. But he already had. Oh, come on, idiot. Sorry. I'd call myself names, but don't worry about it. So they had the built-in US2 here. We didn't want to use that. We put a side imaging transducer on here, which is a Lowrance 3-in-1. But that mount is, like I say, transducer shield and saver. It comes with 2 band clamps. And what I found is that when you're in rough water, that transducer will, over time, shift like this. Okay, not what you want to have happen. So I added 2 additional band clamps to it. Another $20. Okay. But what happens is when you get that tightened down, it doesn't move. And I've been in, with my older boat had that arrangement, and I've been in Ontario a lot and the area out here. At the time I lost my engine cowling on the lake here. But anyway, I didn't have any issues once I had that tightened down with 4 clamps on it. So again, that's part of beefing up your mount. It's something simple to do, but you don't need it unless you know about it. So, and yeah, that's my tractor, which is down right now.
How does side imaging work on the trolling motor with the motor moving around?
It's fine. It's kind of neat. I can actually do side imaging. I can do a 360 style with it without having the 360. I use it all the time. If I'm, for example, there's a strip on the St. Lawrence River up near Waddington where there's an old roadbed, and I can use my side imaging and watch the distance from that roadbed to make sure I maintain my drift line. Okay. Now I've also used that. Lately I've been using it with my live sonar because it'll sweep back and forth automatically, but you can use side scan for that as well. So there's a lot of uses. I mean, I had a long discussion with the owner of Transducer Shield and Saver. Why do you want side imaging? This, and this. I kept going. He said, oh, okay, I understand. So, okay. It's just how you want to use stuff. All right. So one thing about mounting your trolling motor, I see so many boats, especially the V-hull style boats, where they use the plug for your trolling motor. Okay. If you're going to take your trolling motor off the boat, then use one of those plugs. The best plug I've seen, and one I told Joe to get, he loves it, is the brand new Minn Kota one. Very expensive. It's 170 bucks for the plug. It's waterproof. It's really nice, okay? But I've also seen situations where people are using the old house style, the 3-pin one, okay? And twist locks, yeah. Yeah, I know. That's standard for that type of stuff. I've seen it on Lunds. I've seen it on a lot of people. I worked on a Skeeter that had that, which is a bass boat, which is weird. But anyway, if you're not going to remove your trolling motor off the boat, okay, you're not on a releasable mount type of thing, hardwire it into your boat. Get rid of that plug connection, because over time it will corrode and give you intermittent trolling motors. Power, okay? Very, very important for that, okay? The next thing is that when you screw it to your boat, use anti-seize. Anti-seize can be your friend and also be a pain. If anybody's used anti-freezes, anti-seizes end up with silver. Use gloves. You know. It doesn't matter. You're still going to get it everywhere. But anyway, at least try not to. And the other thing you want to do is try to beef up the mounting area for your trolling motor. The Lunds that I've worked on, put trolling motors on, basically has a piece of 3/4-inch marine plywood up there. I've seen it where they're a little bit soft or spongy. And so what we've done is we backed that with aluminum plates. Okay. And the other thing you want to do is put a bounce buster on your trolling motor. If your trolling motor is it's mounted on the bow and it's hanging back, you got that swing weight, and every time you hit a wave, it's going to ruin your mount. Okay. Real life situation, I had a Fortrex motor on my bass boat. 3 days out of 4 on Champlain, I broke the mount. Okay. And it was a little bit bumpy, but I wasn't going super fast. And what happened is the trolling motor would come down and bounce and hit like that, and backwards, shear off the screws in the mount. Fortunately, that was at a time when we had Minn Kota trailer support. So I went over there and said, hey, I need a new mount. It's fine. The third time I did it, he says, well, yeah, we're out of mounts. But anyway, but once I added a bounce buster to my trolling motor, no issues whatsoever, none. So it's just, again, something else to add. Yeah, trailer, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially on rough roads. Try pulling your boat trailer on Pennsylvania Interstate 81 south of Carlisle.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah, when you're heading up that hill, it's a great oscillation if you like that, but it's a pain in the butt. Again, use anti-seize. I've got some stuff at home which is a food grade anti-seize. It's a copper color. It's supposed to be not as messy, but I know. Yeah, I haven't tested it yet. But anyway, again, just something simple, because you know what happens with stainless? They gall, and yeah, I've had to drill out screw heads. Not a good thing. No. This is under a bow panel for a trolling motor. This is a Ghost trolling motor mounted on a Lund. Okay. Again, you can see some of the wear on that plywood itself, so you know it's fatiguing. So what we did is we put I think that was either a 3/8 or 1/2-inch aluminum plate under there. It's severe, yeah. And you notice I did a couple other things. I got the big washers, okay, help spread the load. Probably not needed with that big of a plate, but again, it just made me feel better. And I had them anyway. I also use extra long screws, because if those screws start loosening out, you certainly don't want them to loosen all the way and fall out. Okay, so that's what I did. And then we had to route the trolling motor power around, and any other cables we had. So that's something you can do. Again, you want to make sure you're coming back in one piece. And you want to make sure you can do it day in and day out. And this is what I'm talking about, the motor stabilizer here. Okay, this is the vertical piece. This is on an Ultrix. But if you look at this angle here, it's kind of drooping down because he didn't have that on at first. And what happens is those screws start shearing, and over time they will break. Okay, that's just the design of their mount. Okay, so by putting that bar in there, you solve that problem. Okay, I mean, a lot of this stuff is common sense. It really, really is. Okay, so for power, I can't remember anyway. So for power, figure out what your power consumption is. Okay, and what I'm gonna suggest, if you're not running a separate electronics battery, carry a jump pack. I use NOCO, little NOCO jump packs you can get at Bass Pro, Cabela's. I also run jumper cables because, hey, you have a buddy over there. And I've helped buddies in tournaments. I was down in Louisiana, came back in. My guy I knew was sitting on the side of the river there. Went over, what's happened? So I loaned him my jumper cables. We got him going, and he makes it back in. So it's just handy to have. Again, keep in mind, you fuse at the unit, okay? You put a breaker at the battery. That way, if you have a short in your wiring between the unit and where you're coming from the battery, one of those will trip, okay? Because it'll short out. It'll either blow a breaker or blow the fuse, okay? Very important. Make sure you have the correct wire size for your load. If you're going to lithiums, don't have an unexpected cost. See if your charger is compatible, because you might have to get a new charger, or your charger might be compatible. Like for example, a Minn Kota PC, charger will be compatible with some lithiums because the battery management system inside. But others, the battery management system is not as good as, for example, the ones I have on my Battleborns, the ones that are on the Ionics, things like that. So you just have to check that. So this is power consumption. Again, what we're going to notice is that as we increase the number of units, my current requirement is going to go up. Okay, so I got 1.9 there. It's what, 3.3 amps. Now I've got an active target with a couple of 9-inch units, and I had to add a network switch in there. So now I'm running almost 5 amps. So again, be aware when you're adding units, how much is the current draw, typical, and they'll be spec'd out. I think I have a video. I did a video on running a touch unit inside your house, which has a power supply in there, but I put a couple tables in there. They gave you the average current use for these units. Okay, so that's a reference point for you. So.
Do you do any current monitoring?
Not the current monitoring per se. I do voltage monitoring, but not generally current. Although I'll take that back. I do current monitor my charging system because with my Evinrude, I have dual alternators in there, and I use the second alternator to charge my electronics battery as I'm running, and I can watch how much current's being pumped in. It's like 30, 35 amps, which is impressive. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. So these are 2 units. We've gone from 112. Actually, we're at 2 12s right now. 6.7 amps. Bigger units, more power. More units, more power. Just real simple. And this one is with the active target. You notice we don't need a network hub. However, my power usage is now at 8.3 amps. Okay. If you're out 10 hours, that's 80 amps. If you're out 10 hours without cranking your big motor and you're running everything off your big motor, you're now decaying that starting battery. Okay. All right.
Eventually that battery will fail too.
Yes, absolutely. So what happened is that the thing ran out of battery just as I was into talking about the batteries, which is rather appropriate because, again, that's the thing that you don't want to have happen when you're on the water. You got to make sure you have good enough batteries. So this is a battery box on a Ranger 620 V-hull boat. Okay, and what we did is we got the trolling motor batteries and the starting battery all in the center box there. We also added a 5th battery specifically for the electronics, okay, with its own charger. So what we did, if you look at it, we've got covers on everything. This is all a full lithium install. So, okay, this is an example in the back of a Camus of a 5th battery, which is the electronics battery, which is an ionic 125 amp hour battery, which we found lasted roughly 14 hours, which isn't bad for 5 units and 2 active targets. So that's more than sufficient for most people. Okay, we added a 5-bank Minn Kota PCL charger, and but if you notice, there's one thing though that I want to highly talk about, or just talk about a little bit. See that battery tray there? That's an aluminum battery tray, and what it is that over the years I've used those plastic ones, the ones you can get for $10 or so, $10, $15. Lots of places like Bass Pro or your local marina or whatever, and that's what they typically put in these boats. On Champlain, I actually ripped through those, 3 or 4 of those over the course of less than 10 years. And what will happen is that strap will eventually eat through that plastic and split it right in half. Or it could be another situation where on this boat, this starting battery back here was in a plastic tray. Well, the tray that came from the factory was probably for a 27 size battery. They had a 31 class battery in there. And rather than putting the right size battery tray in there, they just simply cut the side off. Not something you want to do. Do it right. Get you a really rugged battery tray, screw it to the floor really well, or screw it to your location really well, and then use these straps to strap the battery in place so when you're going through that rough water, your batteries are not bouncing around on you. Okay. So let's talk a little briefly about wiring. I've got a lot more on my YouTube channel about how to wire stuff. So if you want to learn more about that, check out the YouTube channel. Okay. One thing you want to do is always use marine grade wire. Okay. You don't want your wires corroding over time, turning green, eventually decomposing enough to break or create an electrolysis action that's causing some major issues down the road. Okay. So marine grade stuff, it's tinned, it's multiple strands, lets you carry more current evenly across that cable. Okay. But it also has a fuel rated jacket. So a lot of these power cables we run are back near gas tanks in your boat. And you want to make sure that the jacket on your wiring is fuel rated. Okay, very important. The other thing is use marine grade connectors. I use marine grade waterproof heat shrink connectors. Okay, I'll show you what they look like in a moment. The other thing you want to use is use ignition proof breakers. The last thing you want to do is have gas fumes in where your batteries are, and you start something and maybe the breaker trips, the breaker sparks. Next thing you know, you have an explosion. Not a good deal. So always use ignition proof breakers. Okay. And then you use marine grade fuse holders or fuse blocks in your boat. Okay. Again, use marine grade stuff. It doesn't cost that much more than El Cheapo stuff, but it will save you a lot of time and trouble. Okay. The other thing I do is I use a mounting board, which is the starboard material. It's kind of a trade name. It's HDPE, high density polyethylene. Okay. That's the marine board I use. In this situation, I've got a 1x2 board here, and that one is, I think, 3/4 inch thick. And what I did is I used the standoffs on the back of that to epoxy it on the side of the center console. And in this situation, I put a cutoff switch for the trolling motor with its breaker. Okay. I put a cutoff switch for the electronics with its breaker, a fuse block for the all the electronics, so that's a 12-position fuse block. This is a Garmin network hub. This is a NEMA bus here, and this is a stereo system, which is a can't even think of the name. So anyway, so that's a nice stereo system, but in the boat there. But again, this is all built inside. Down below is where we have the batteries. This large battery here is a 36-volt, 100-amp-hour battery for the trolling motor. I hate to think how much that costs. So anyway, don't do this in your install. Okay, this is a power cord I got in from the factory. I won't say which factory, but you probably guess. If you look very carefully, you really can't see it. Maybe I'll try to blow this thing up for you. But you can see there's a little nick in that wire. If you get a nick in the case of the covering the wire, cut it off, redo it. That way when you pull your wire, always have excess wire to be able to do that, so that if you do make a mistake, you can correct it and correct it correctly. Okay, so just don't do that. Okay, so this is the marine wire I use. This is Anchor brand. It's the duplex wire, which is inside of this jacket. Much easier to pull, a lot easier to pull, although I've used the single conductors as well. The problem is with the single conductors, the jacket is a little bit tougher, so it's a little bit harder to strip cable on that. This duplex wire has a little bit softer wire inside, at least it seems like it. It's a lot easier to strip that wire. Okay. I usually, when I'm running a boat, I use about 30 35 or so feet to go 2 runs, one to the console, one to the bow. Again, it depends on the length of your boat and how much wire you want to run, okay? But again, I typically use 8 gauge for my electronics. Okay. Marine connectors, okay? Make sure you use the proper size for the wire you have, okay? They are color-coded by size and use a proper type. I generally either use butt connectors to connect 2 wires together, or I'll use a ring terminal so I can screw it down to a post, okay? I don't like the open-end ones. They have a tendency to come out at times at the wrong, especially the wrong time. At least the ring terminal, as long as the screw is still in the block, it's going to stay there, okay? There's a different color coded. Again, this is an 1822. This is a 1416, and the yellow is a 1012. A brighter pink, brighter than this pink here, is an 8 gauge. So just remember they're color coded. Make sure you use the right size for the right wire. Okay. And this is the breaker. Okay. One thing about the breakers you want to be careful of. The breaker has a battery side and a load side. Okay. In this situation, my battery's coming in from the top, and then I have these 2 wires going out to my boat, basically the boat electronics, and that's the output side. This is again, an ignition-proof breaker. Okay. Fuse holders. Always fuse your units. Okay, I put a breaker near the battery where it's coming out of the battery before I start running the wire to the destinations, and then I fuse at the location where I'm dropping it to. Okay. Some units will come with fuse holders. Others have built-in lines, and others come without. Generally, Lowrance comes with this type, which is waterproof, but I just don't like using it because it's another set of connections. But they do work. Okay. Garmin comes with them already in line. If you get some of the newer units, they come with a miniature version of that, which is fine. Some of the older ones use glass fuse. Not a good idea to have glass fuses in your boat. So, okay. And then Humminbird, at least with the helixes and some of the Solix units, did not come with fuse holders. So always fuse everything. Okay. And these are this is an example of a fuse block. This is a 6-position marine grade fuse block. It's on the starboard material. This is in black. And I've got the studs in the back there that I'm going to epoxy this on inside the console to make it easy to access. The thing I like about this fuse block is that you can see the fuse sizes. And if you label everything, you'll know exactly what's what. This is your ground area here. There's little LEDs in the middle there. The neat thing about that is if you are wiring up and say you forget to put a fuse in, the LED will light up and say, hey, you have an open circuit. And that's pretty handy to let you test the circuit to make sure you have continuity all the way through without actually blowing a fuse yet. But if you do blow a fuse, you have the LED lit up for you. Okay. I'm going to put links to all this stuff in the description for you. Okay. And other components. This is on a Camus boat where I added the Sirius XM. I added a fusion module. So this is all the stereo and the satellite receiver. We ran antennas into it. We ran separate powers into it. It's a lot of stuff that went into that module. The only place I had to mount that was behind what's called a hot foot. So this is your console up here. This is the hot foot. This is the back wall behind there. So that's one way to do that. Okay. Testing. I'm not going to talk a lot about in detail on testing. I've got a bunch of videos on the YouTube channel as well. Check your power. Okay. Check your transducer connections. Okay. Do a power on unit test. In other words, does the unit even power up? Okay. Then do a unit function test. Do I have sonar? Do I have my charts? Do I have side imaging? Things like that. Just go through the basics. Okay. And then run a simple network test. What you want to do is you want to see, can this unit see everything it's supposed to see on your network? And then can every other unit on the network see everything else the way it's supposed to? Okay. And that's on both the Ethernet and NEMA bus, if you have those connected. Okay. And another thing you can do to check out your transducers out of the water is you can actually listen to it. There's a very faint ping, ping, ping sound. See if you can listen to that. I know some guys, as they get older, their hearing loss is bad. They may have been in the military or they may have been around heavy machinery and don't hear that frequency. But if you can hear it, then that's a nice quick test to say, hey, transducer is actually working. And the last thing you want to look at is clearance testing. Make sure that if you put your, say, your live sonar on a pole, make sure it's not going to hit anything, like your trolling motor head, the boat itself, things like that. So that's just a simple group of tests you're going to want to run. Okay. Network testing. Again, all these boats, the newer units typically like to be connected together. When you get them connected together, you unleash a lot more power on that unit. For example, I can be on my console with somebody on the bow, and I can look at my live sonar at my console very easily, just by simply using the network. So you want to make sure that from all the units, okay, that you can see the network, both Ethernet and NEMA 2000, which again, if NEMA is there, okay. Make sure you can see all the devices on the NEMA bus, okay. For example, if you have a compass is going to be running on a NEMA 2000. The compass is in a 0.1. Garmin has a heading sensor, that type of thing. So make sure that you can see those from every device that needs to see it. Okay. So, all right. So this is just a quick install example of my boat. I've got two Lowrance units there, obviously. I put those little red things in. If you're curious, those are locks for it. Everything is mounted on the console. Underneath the console is a network hub. Things like that. I got power run to that and power to the bow. And this is actually an older picture of my bow, but I've got the stacked units. I think I talked earlier about, in my boat, I had to go with these shorter versions of the gimbal mounts. That was so I could see over this trolling motor while I was running. That helped a lot, but when I added the air ride seats back, which raised the seats up about 6 inches, now I could see everything really well. Last thing you want to do is put all your units in the boat, put the trolling motor on there, and now you have a blind spot. Make sure you don't have a blind spot. Safety needs to come first. Okay. So, okay. And this is the layout of my battery box. I've got my trolling motor batteries here. There's actually 3 of them. You can't see the third one under there. And on this side, that was the old starting battery and electronics batteries underneath that cover there. I've since switched those to put the electronics in front of the starting battery. And I've got 5 banks of charging. I've got a 3 bank and a 2 bank, and they're all 15 amps per bank. So, because a lot of times, well, when I'm doing tournaments, I want to make sure I get as quick a charge as possible. So with a 10 amp charger, you may not charge overnight. I do notice the lithiums charge roughly 2 to 3 hours, which is pretty handy. So, okay. And then what I've added to my boat, I've added both a trolling motor cutoff switch, which I show you here. There's a full video on my YouTube channel on that as well. And I also added a cutoff switch on my electronics battery. I did that in a short. So, okay. Something you may want to think about. So a lot more installations I've got on the YouTube channel. So if you get a chance, check them out. If you haven't done already, please subscribe to the channel. The nice thing about YouTube, it's free. You just need an account. So, okay. There's lots of other resources. The nice thing about these units today, I know people don't get paper manuals anymore, okay? But the manuals that come with the units are actually on the units themselves. So you can go to a PDF viewer and you can look up and display the manual online, say on the unit, okay? So it's a bunch of training classes, a bunch of YouTube videos. I've got a ton. There's a bunch of other channels as well out there. Facebook groups are good. Bass Boat Central is good. And there's other electronics related message boards. Unfortunately, some of them have gone away, like the Bass Fishing homepage. That's unfortunately deceased. So, and we've gone through a bunch of questions. So I appreciate you guys watching this. If you like it, please hit a like on the button down below. And thank you for enduring the presentation. Thank you.